Good evening, everyone. Before I go on, I would like to thank Jeff Shirley for having me on. It's a honor for him to let me speak to you today. Since you probably all saw Jeff's witty and hilarious Facebook posts, you know that I am the drummer for the evening. And unless you're John Bonham or Stuart Copeland, no one really knows who you are. So let me introduce myself before I go on. My name is Steve Barker. I am a fair to Midland drummer. I'm a pretty damn good drum teacher. I run a semi successful drum YouTube channel called Junk Drummer TV, and I am a woodworker on the side. Now, I always think of three things as a very Charleston institution. So maybe some of you all would know me as the former drummer for Quiet. I played in Quiet for almost 7 years. It was one of the funnest adventures that I ever went on, and there was a lot of adventures in that band, and a lot of stuff we can't talk about out in public, if you know what I'm saying. I currently play with Sasha Colette and the Magnolias. I've played with her now for almost 10 years. I also play in a band called Signals. I teach music at Route 60 Music, or I teach drums at Route 60 Music in Barbersville. Oh God, I've been there for like 14, 15 years. And I also teach drum lessons out of my house because I had to go online after, that thing happened. And the reason why I'm all dressed up today is because I have not been able to get dressed up for like a year because, that thing happened. And I figured I would put a little something on nice for you all because a boy likes to feel pretty. I talk for a living. I teach drums all day, and I've done about 150 plus YouTube channels, and this is probably the first time in a long time where I've been stumped on how to do this talk. I know that most musicians have come on here and talked about their first gig and their favorite gig and a future gig they want. I'm only going to do one of those. And my first has really less to do with me and more about me wanting to talk about a very special time in the Charleston music scene. I'm talking about a music scene that happened mid 90s, mid to late 90s. I would almost guess that there's more than a couple people watching this right now that attended some of the shows that would be considered the Charleston Nitro punk rock scene, and specifically the all ages scene that encompassed the pit in Nitro and the LKM Auditorium in Nitro. Is the LKM Auditorium still a thing? And of course, Common Grounds in Charleston. Shout out, Bob. And also there was still they would do some gigs in Charleston or in Huntington. We did some gigs at the Rollerama, but this is a very special time in the scene. And I'm 43, and I've been in the music scene between Huntington and Charleston since March 3rd, 1995, because I have a memento from that first show that I ever played, and we'll talk about that later. I am from Boone County, West Virginia, the vaunted southern coal fields of our fine state. And when you're from Boone County, when you say we're going to town, it means you're going to either Canal City or Charleston. And somehow, on a trip to town, me and my friends who were kind of wanted to be in a band found out that there were like three or four venues where people our age could go play. And as soon as we found that out, we were like, let's start a band. And we started a band in January, and we played our first gig on March 3rd, 1995. So if I, I'm almost for certain that the bass player had got his bass for that Christmas. So he had a bass for like 3 months, and then we were playing a gig, and we played our first gig at the Pit in Nitro. It is around the corner from the LKM Auditorium. I live in Huntington and have since 2001, so I'm not sure if that place is still open or not, but it was around the corner on that storefront little mini mall type area there. It seemed like there was like a Rite Aid or CVS on the corner. And it's such an important time in the music scene for both cities because I know many, many musicians who started there and still play and contribute to the music scene to this day. And I am one of them. Uh, the band was called the band was called Big Daddy Stick, and we won't talk about the origin of that name today. But we somehow put together however many songs you put together when you're in your first band ever and you've only been a band for 3 months. Yeah, right at 3 months. And somehow, probably it was me, went and talked our way into playing a gig. And the woman who ran the pit was this lady named the Sarge. I don't think any of us knew what her real name was. Like I said, there's people out there watching. Did anyone know what Sarge's real name was? All we knew is we knew she was military, and she was cool. She was cool as the last day of school, and she created this wonderful, short-lived, unfortunately, scene where teenagers could go and be themselves and hang out in a very safe environment and listen to the music that we all dug. I'm talking about bands like Flood and Dirt Bear and Seven. There was a band called RFC, which was, if I'm not mistaken, it was short for Royal Fudge and Cake, I think is what RFC stood for. And it was just wonderful. And as a drum teacher, it breaks my heart that I have so many students who want to play and want to express themselves and gig, and they don't really have any safe place to do that. Since the Charleston Nitro punk rock scene, I would guess that it ended in the 97-ish, 8-ish era. I was in college then and had moved on. But since then, I know there's been a few places here and there that lasted very short amounts of time that tried to do the same thing, and it's never worked out, and it's a huge bummer. But I remember playing that gig and being like, I'm going to do this forever. This is going to be the thing I do for the rest of my life. And I have. And every gig that I've played, every lesson that I've taught, and every YouTube video that I have made, the beginning of that was in Charleston, or old Nitro, that day on March 3rd, 1995, which is only like 2 days ago, which means that I've been playing gigs for 26 years. Whew, wow. And I can only describe it. I'll describe it like this and go on, and then I'm going to explain this memento. It was like the end of that Blind Melon video, No Rain. Because, like I said before, I'm from Boone County, and I'm not going to disparage my home place, because I do love it, and I love my family that's there. But let's just say that if you want to be in a punk band, you are not going to be in the mainstream of Boone County culture, if you know what I'm saying. And going and playing that gig for the first time was truly like the end of the Blind Melon video. It was like the bee girl when she goes into the garden and she finds the other people who are all wearing bee suits, and she's really happy because she found her people. She found her tribe. That's what that scene was, and I've been chasing that joyful feeling and trying to make that joyful sound since March 3rd, 1995. And real quick on this memento, and I'll go on to my next part. This is a testament to wonderful teenage stupidity. We figured that we wanted to make a big statement at our very first gig ever. So on the way from Seth, West Virginia, which is where I'm from, or where I grew up, to Nitro, West Virginia, we stopped at the Goodwill in Marmet, and we bought a gigantic porcelain piggy bank. And during the last song of our set, which I'm sure was a 2-minute fast as hell blitzkrieg of badly played teenage rebellion, we smashed with a baseball bat that porcelain pig, and we all took pieces of it home. And even as a 17-year-old, I still had the wherewithal to think about like getting something to remind me of this moment, because I knew at the time, I was very aware that at the moment I was doing something significant in my life. So this is a piece of that porcelain pig. The Charleston Nitro punk rock scene. If you've seen a lot of bands in the last 2 decades, you've seen veterans of that scene. And I would like to thank Bob Webb. I don't know if Bob Webb's still alive. I hope he is, because he meant a lot to us. And Sarge, and I never met the people who ran the LKM Auditorium, but that is my first favorite. That's my first. So now on to my favorite. And the more I put this thing together, it almost ended up like I wanted to do a little bit of a love letter to West Virginia, the state that I have learned to love more and more as I get older. Because I'm going to be honest with you, Charleston, I was one of those people in my younger days that really disparaged his home place. And the more I live here, the more I really love it. It's what is it? It's not the state that I want, but it's the state that I deserve, if you know what I'm saying. And I want to talk about, and it's the reason why I have my mug here with a non-alcohol beverage in it, a mug from my favorite place in West Virginia, hands down. And I was almost scared to talk about it because it's kind of a hidden gem that not a lot of people know about, and I don't really want a lot of people knowing about it. But it is Holly River State Park. I'm a big time camper. I'm a big outdoorsman. I like to hunt, I like to fish, and I like to camp in the summer and the fall. And I camp in every possible place that West Virginia has to offer. One of my favorite ways that West Virginia was ever described to me was a friend of mine who was in a band with me back in the day, who also came from the Charleston Nitro punk rock scene. He told me the best thing about West Virginia is very user-friendly if you like the outdoors. We're not many hours and miles away from fantastic spots. Cranberry Glades, Blackwater Falls, Burnsville Lake, Sutton Lake, Utah Fish. And I go to this place at least once a year. I usually spend my birthday there. There's something magical about Holly River's campground. It's not your usual sterile open campground. Every campsite is enclosed in the wilderness, but it also still has all of your amenities, so it's not like you're super roughing it. Although last time I camped in the rustic area with no electricity and water, and it was wonderful. Holly River, it's just, I think I'm going to tell them to put my ashes there when it's all said and done. It's how much I love it. I went there for the first time when I was a little kid with my parents, because my parents, Liz and Steve Barker, took me there a lot. And I think as a kid, you don't appreciate it. And, I live in Huntington. It isn't like I live in, a big bustling city. But I'm still a country boy at heart, despite the vest and expertly tied knot. And when I need to just get out of town and just get away from stoplights and work and those things that, let's be honest, as humans, we're not really evolutionarily built to deal with very well, Holly River is always the perfect palate cleanser. And I always leave that place. It's magical to me. I always leave that place in a better mood than when I got there. And I mean, if that's not a place to value, I don't know what is. There's a lot of stuff to do there. There's trails and horse trails, and like every campground in West Virginia, there's a falls somewhere. And I don't do any of that stuff. They tell me that there are trails, and they tell me that there are horse trails. I see the horses. But man, I just sit and be in the wilderness, and it feels like the most rustic I've already used, but it feels like the most just like in the mountains that you can be and still have the safety and the convenience of water and bathrooms and stuff like that. But yeah, Holly River is my favorite place in West Virginia. And if you go, don't go at the end of May and don't go in October because that's when I usually go. And I really like it when that state park is not very populated. But any of those other weeks, I highly suggest that you go there if you're a camper and that's a thing that you may like. I think you'll love it. So then the last part, my future. This has been the hardest one to deal with. I'm not a spiritual man by any means, but what's that old saying? If you wanna make God laugh, tell him your plans. I think, oh Jeff, the future. This thing like makes you have to self-examine far more than a Southern West Virginia boy wants to. But I've had to do that over the last couple weeks. I think my future is eventually retiring from music. I can't see myself joining any other bands. I like the two bands I'm in now, and I've been asked to do other things, and I've turned it all down. I think that I have, except for what I'm going to do with Sasha in the future, we have a record if that's going to be released one day. One day when the world starts back up. It's been done since like March. But after that band runs its course, I think I'm going to retire playing music because I think that I have been so lucky to play with such fantastic artists that it would be very hard for me to top that. And I'm just not interested in doing anything that's not as good as Quiet, which I think is just one of the most fantastic bands that West Virginia's ever seen. Jeff Ellis, who I think is one of the most fantastic singer-songwriters that West Virginia's ever seen. A guy that I used to play with for a long time and actually played Mountain Stage with, and I played Mountain Stage with Quiet as well. Bud Carroll and the Southern Souls, who I think is just one of the best guitar players in that West Virginia has ever had to offer. I've been very lucky and fortunate to play with musicians who are better than me and put up with my fair to middling skills. So I think like retirement from playing music. I'll probably still do musicals and stuff like that because I do musicals on the side. I really enjoy that. But unless something else comes along, I could see myself riding into the sunset after the Sasha Colette and the Magnolia Band is over. And my future definitely holds moving from Huntington, my adopted city of birth that I love so much. I lived in Charleston from 95 to 2001. I moved to Huntington in 2001, and I adore this town. But I think I'm going to move to the country and raise a lot of peaches. You know what I mean? I'm not sure that I am wired anymore for city, town, like life. I want to. I'm currently looking for a house to purchase with a very special person, and I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to ride into the sunset. I like westerns, and that sounds like I've from the Charleston nitro punk rock scene to playing with the symphony with Quiet to recording this last record with Sasha Colette and the Magnolias and doing and playing some live streams lately. I think after all that's done, I'm going to retire and let some of the new kids come in and make all the good, awesome sounds that's going to hopefully inspire and make us all a little happier than we usually are. Because as a musician, if you're doing that, then you're doing your best. That's doing music on its highest level. And I think I'm going to raise a garden. I'm going to have chickens. And I think I'm going to have some goats, maybe some alpacas. And I think that's what I'm going to do in my future. And I'll still teach lessons. I'll still always be a drum teacher, and I'm going to try my best to expand my small little YouTube channel that has 35,000 subs. Yes, if you're a YouTuber, you always know how many subs you have and how many views you have, which is right now 5.1 million. And I think that's my future. Uh, because I think I have hopefully served the listener as well as I can. And I know that I've tried real hard. And I know I've had probably way more fun than I ever deserve to have. So that's my future. Jeff Shirley, damn you for making me look inward to my feelings. I like that Hank Hill doesn't think about his feelings, but you did it. You made me do it. So yeah, that's my first, my favorite, and my future. My first was playing a gig in Nitro, West Virginia on March 3rd, 1995, and finding what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. My favorite is this very small, not very popular state park called Holly River that is in Hocking Valley, West Virginia. I forgot to say that. And then my future is to ride off into the sunset and still hopefully influence the next generation of drummers in the most positive way that I can. And shear some alpacas and sheep. I think that sounds just about like heaven. It sounds like almost heaven to me. Thank you all. I've been Steve Barker, and I hope you all are all doing well and staying safe during these trying times that we're all going through. Thank you all very much, and I'll see you next time.